All right, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Garrett McLaughlin. Thank you for joining me this evening as we cover PR Your Spring Goal Race. Start today with off-season strength training. Those of you that know me, I push strength training as much as possible. I think from a running standpoint and just looking at runners, some people are doing a good job, other people are neglecting, some people are mixed in the middle. But I think one of those things when we think about the high injury rates of running, just that desire to run faster, perform better as we age and get older. It needs to be a staple within your routine. So hopefully we can kind of dig into that a little bit more here today. All of you so far have kind of dropped a line in the Q&A. And I got a couple new people who just joined us here. So those of you who just joined on, drop a note in the Q&A there, click that Q&A button, what's your name, where you're from. If for some reason you can't stay for the entire webinar, I will send a replay tomorrow morning. So check your inbox and check your spam folder if you don't see it. But any questions as we go through this, feel free to slow me down. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to provide some insight from your experience. And hopefully we can kind of provide as much value as possible today. So how to achieve your next PR with this proactive off-season strength training approach. I think that's the biggest thing here. We're talking about spring already, right? All the conversations I have with my running clients, we're in the process right now. We're clearing out Q3 goals. We're looking into Q4, but we're also saying, hey, what's on the horizon for spring? Like, what do you have your eyes set on? So we can hopefully do the things we need to do now to be in a better position come April and May. And I think that's really the most important thing from a running standpoint is a lot of runners do a good job planning races, don't do a good job in terms of really proactively planning for that training cycle. So if you're going to kick up in January and you're going to train for a race come April, October, November, December, those months really need to be devoted to laying a good foundation. And that's where off-season strength training comes in. So during the webinar today, we will cover key principles that will help create more long-term running success, how to design a strength training program and workout specifically. What are those key elements you need to have within each individual workout? And then specific exercises, obviously, and you'll know me, I'm very OCD to a degree, right? When it comes to exercises, I truly believe doing an evaluation first, laying out exercises that are specific to the person is the most important thing. But I'm going to provide what I feel like are the staples from a strength training standpoint. So hopefully it gives you some ideas of maybe things you're missing, things you need to include, or things you need to really just double down on. At the very end, I will be raffling off one spot in the upcoming Run Strong Challenge. This is something that I do usually once a year around this time because it has a very off-season focus. The goal here is to get a group of runners together. Even though it's a group of runners, everyone has their individual strength training and injury prevention program. And then over that 6-week period of time, continue to work on your program, fits nicely alongside your running, stay consistent, sleep, nutrition aspect as well, consistency from a training standpoint, can win some cool prizes and things along the way. So it's a pretty fun program. I'm going to raffle off one spot in that for, again, completely free for that person. And I'll kind of talk about the details at the very end if any of you are interested in getting assistance throughout this off season as opposed to tackling it on your own. Bob from Howell, welcome. Andrea from Knoxville. Andrea, you are our first non-Nashville person. Non-Michigan, sorry, I'm thinking about Nashville, where you're from originally. But so Andrea from Knoxville, everyone else from Michigan. So if we need to pick on her a little bit, we can this evening. But before we begin, do me a favor, silence any technology around you, get the kids, lock them away in a room, turn the TV off, grab a pen and paper. Or pencil and paper. I want to make sure that as we go through this, anything that you feel like is helpful, you can jot a note, because I want to make sure, again, you're not just here to learn something and it just be an educational thing and that's it. I want to make sure that come tomorrow, you know exactly what you're going to add or take action on within your routine. Maybe it's adding, maybe it's omitting, maybe it's changing and kind of tweaking the dials a little bit. But want to make sure that you guys are actually doing something from this webinar to help really positively impact your running. A little bit about me. My name is Garrett McLaughlin. I know most of you on the webinar today. I either worked with you. Some of you have been on past webinars. I've been Ignite Your Run group in different places, but originally born in Boston, right? Grew up just outside the city. Recently, some of you might not know, recently moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've actually been here for about a month or so. I've been enjoying it a whole lot so far. Again, awesome being on the lake, cool small city, a lot to do outdoors, running, again, Oak Leaf Trail, a lot of cool things to run and enjoy the outdoors and nature, which has been fun. I went to school at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut, got my bachelor's in athletic training, sports medicine, got a master's at Florida International University in Miami, exercise physiology. So try to do a good job now of combining multiple areas, right? Trying to combine the injury rehab, manual therapy, specifically what's called active release techniques, and then the training side of things, running, coaching, strength training, injury prevention, personal training, all those things together into a program. I think I see a lot of runners. I've been having a lot of conversations with new runners now that I've been out here. A lot of people that are getting a massage here, going to a personal trainer, have their running coach, going to PT, a lot of different things going on at once. So trying to simplify that and provide people a lot of value within one kind of cohesive program. That's why in 2016, I created the Healthy Running Program, just trying to help runners. The injury rates are so high. Again, we're all getting older. Despite us trying to fight that or really kind of turn an eye to that. But we need to make sure we're doing the little things on a regular basis to stay healthy, stay performing well. And that's kind of the goal of the Healthy Running Program. These are some of the people I had the good fortune of working with here over the last, 6-7 years or so. Again, a lot of different runners' goals as I look through this list of people, looking at people coming back from as I look here, knee fracture, plantar fasciitis, stress fracture, training for Disney marathon, training for first 10K half marathon, just training to get stronger and run faster, just ran Berlin marathon. So a lot of different people with various running goals. So generally within the Healthy Running Program, again, it doesn't matter what your goal is. If you're a runner trying to get better in some way, whether that's eliminate pain, return to running, develop more efficient running mechanics, improve race times, or just long-term trying to reduce the likelihood of injury, which needs to be a priority of every runner. Those are the types of runners that I work with on a regular basis. We do this through evaluations and movement screenings, just to understand what is your body telling us and how do we address that in a smart and strategic way. Slow motion running analysis, soft tissue manual therapy, like I mentioned, what's called active release techniques, running coaching, informed correction. How do we lay out a smart and strategic running plan while also improving running mechanics in the process? And then we're going to really dig into today that strength training and injury prevention piece. So why this topic might matter to you, plain and simple, 70% of runners get injured each and every year. So we need to use this strength training program to help address old injuries. The greatest predictor of our future injury is a previous injury. So if we could address those old injuries in a smart way to prevent them from coming back, that's a priority. And then also hopefully preventing or reducing the likelihood of future injuries. There's no way, like we throw out this word injury prevention and I say it's a buzzword, it's common, people understand it and know it. There's no way we can prevent injuries from happening. They're going to happen at some time. If we can reduce our likelihood of injury, or we can reduce the severity of injuries when we suffer from them, that's kind of what we're trying to get at here from an injury prevention standpoint. If you're someone that's, again, you look back at this past year, 2022, and you're just disappointed, you feel like, hey, I've been struggling with different injuries, I'm not performing well, things just aren't going my way. That's where off-season strength training can really play a huge role now to set you up for next year, to get you a step ahead rather than January, February, March rolls around and you're trying to catch up at that point. Like I mentioned from the beginning, this is a proactive approach to running performance training and injury prevention. If you're someone that felt like this past year has gone very well, I have some clients, it's funny, I've been talking lately, training for marathons, to say, hey, I just ran 22 miles in my long run, feel like I can go out the next day and do it again. Like as we start to add more strength training, address the body in a smart way, running becomes easier, becomes more enjoyable. There's less soreness, there's less aches and pains, performing better, more enjoyment with the sport, like having fun with your friends. So that kind of fuels people to continue to buy in and to stay consistent from a strength training standpoint. You could also be the person that's not all about running, right? That's me. It's funny to say here as I present on off-season strength training for runners. Yes, I want to be a better runner. I want to reduce the likelihood of injury. I also want to be active and healthy as I'm again 80, 90 years old, however long I last. So as I interact with my kids and my grandkids and continue to go fly fishing and go on trips and hike and do things, like I have a very long-term mindset. So for me, it's not only about running in the right now, which is why I feel like I'm able to make smart choices, because the next race doesn't matter to me necessarily. I always think about, okay, how is this going to have an impact 20, 30, 40 years from now? So if you're someone that's thinking about, again, weight loss, you have diabetes or hypertension, any family history of different type of illnesses, cancers, those kinds of things. I mean, the strength training piece can fit into that very well. So making sure, looking beyond running and thinking about what else do I want to get from this type of training, because it can have a huge impact on your life. What I envision for you moving forward is just to plain and simple, make more informed decisions to better serve your body and running long-term. Looking at running from a long-term lens, I've been saying that here again quite a bit the last minute or so, but a lot of times we focus so much on that next race, right? The race that's right in front of us. We want to do well. We want to push ourselves. Oftentimes we push so hard that we sabotage ourselves for months and years after that. So just doing things in a smart and strategic way that has your best long-term interest in mind. Proactive to me is preventive, right? So if we can do things early on before they become an issue, our goal is to stay out of the healthcare system as much as possible. It can become a messy place. So if we can do the things here before they're actually a problem, we can reduce hopefully healthcare costs, doctor's appointments, MRIs, x-rays, imaging, like doing all of that type stuff, just because we're ahead of the game, taking care of our body in a smart way. And then hopefully based on the webinar today, you'll have a strength training plan that delivers results. If you need my help, again, I would love to work with each of you individually, give you feedback, talk over the phone, right? Provide some advice or help you in some way. Trying to make sure I'm not just this guy on a webinar, but there is a resource if you need me to help you stay accountable and hopefully achieve whatever your biggest running, health, and fitness goals are. So one of my favorite quotes, I think directly relates here: if we exchange life for running, as you look at your running, look at your goals and dreams. It's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than have an opportunity and not be prepared. If you expect to reach your goal, prepare yourself now. This has been one of my favorite quotes for a while now. Les Brown's one of my favorite motivational speakers. Very interesting, compelling story of his life and kind of how he got to where he was today, and definitely recommend you look into him. But I think when I think of off-season strength training, I think of you guys that are here, sitting here, 13 people right now, sitting here on this webinar at this moment, thinking about what do I need to do now to prepare me for 5, 6 months from now. I mean, that's huge. Biggest problem I see with running and spending a lot of time at local running stores, injury clinics, those kinds of things, is most people approach me in March or April and say, "Hey, Garrett, I'm struggling. Can you help me?" And I almost like I throw out my shoulders, right, and think maybe, at this point, like this is probably something we should have figured out back in October, November, December. So I think doing the little things ahead of time, being proactive, so you're prepared for those opportunities that you're going to encounter along the way, as opposed to getting closer to those opportunities and realize, oh shoot, I didn't do what I was supposed to do when I had the time. This is one of the most important things that I like to kind of put in front of you. And that's why we really preach and push off-season strength training, is because we're preparing and being proactive for those opportunities rather than waiting for them and not being ready. So question for you guys, Dawn, I appreciate already put something in the Q&A here. What brought you to this webinar today? So if you can drop me a quick line, let me know what you're looking to get from the webinar this evening. I'm laughing at Andrea. Yes, Andrea, I'll be sending the replay. She's currently running and can't take notes. Yes, I'll send that to you tomorrow if you want to reflect back on it. So if you guys drop a quick line here, what brought you to the webinar today? What is the most important thing you wish to leave with? And hopefully I can provide that for you over the next 40, 45 minutes. We'll kind of get moving here quickly to make sure we cover everything. Let's see if I can add some of these from before. Yeah, St. Joe. Might see some things coming through on your end. All right, guys, so drop a note in here. What are you looking to get from this webinar? What's the most important thing you want to leave with? Prep for Boston, awesome. In future races and beyond. Yet now's the time for that. Terry, trying to get back the motivation, get the feet taken care of, feet or foot. So now's a good time as we start to get into these colder months. Anyone else, feel free to drop a line in there. We'll make sure we cover that topic. Some of these, I know Don, Terry, Dorina will kind of cover that in a more general way with some of the content. Terry will talk about some exercises. Don will talk about some exercises and strategies. But I appreciate you guys chiming in there. So as we kind of dive right in here, I want to talk about my some principles. To me, principles are the most important component that should guide your training program. A lot of times we just do things to do things, and we don't really have a written set of rules that we follow, which really create success. So these are some things that I've over the years really stand by, and it's what I kind of base my programs off of. I don't just give exercises to give exercises. The exercises are molded to the person based on these set of principles. So first one, periodization. Periodization simply means your program is going to change, and again, think in terms of volume, right? We look at this picture right here, running. So maybe come January, you're at that point at lower volume. We're just going to make this up. Say at that point, you're only running 15 miles a week. You're trying to build up to 40 miles a week in preparation for your half marathon or full marathon. Next couple of months, you slowly ramp up your mileage as you build volume for that goal race. Once that goal race finishes, you reduce volume, you back down, you recover. You usually have, depending on your race schedule, 1 month, 2 months, 2.5 months. Get dropped back down. We're just going to say 15 miles again. We build back up slowly over time for our October, November goal race, and then we back down. We're kind of right here, right? People just finished Detroit Free Press, Chicago, people running Indy Monumental here coming up pretty soon in November. So we're at this point right now where we're starting to complete these fall goal races, and we have October, November, December, which we would term the off season. Of course, and you can see here why this line never goes down to zero. You're probably not going to stop running. At that point, we don't want to stop completely. We're just going to shift our focus in some way based on what we want to kind of get out of that time of year. So at these specific points here, right after your spring goal race, after your fall goal race, when you have these times where you can actually reduce mileage, recover, that's where we actually want to ramp up our strength training volume. So you can see here, most people finish their goal race in October, November, maybe. Their running volume is going to drop down. Their strength training is going to kick up a notch. These are the people like you guys that are setting yourselves up well for next year. You're understanding, hey, I don't need to remain at high running volume. I probably don't even want to do that from an injury standpoint. I'm going to back down my running volume. I'm going to increase my strength training. I'm going to address any aches, pains, and issues that I've had throughout the year. I'm going to get stronger, more stable, more powerful. So then when I go to pick up my running again in January, I can do so and do it in a better way than I did in 2022. If we continue to go through the cycle of kind of where we're changing the variables as we go through the year, we're building up our running, we're ramping down our strength training, we're taking down our running, we're ramping up our strength training. Usually as we get to the next training cycle, right? As we train for a spring goal race, good, we did great. We kind of shift, we do more strength training, then we pick up again for fall. We typically can do a little bit better each time, right? Because that strength training has helped really reestablishing a strong foundation, allowing us to get stronger throughout this process. Majority runners I see do not shift gears. They continue to run kind of similar mileage throughout the year, not enough recovery, not enough strength training. Over time, just based on the body and human physiology, our body's going to lose strength. It's going to lose power. We're going to lose stability and proprioception. This is why we tend to see, I know, other cognitive issues and things like that. Older, right? Elderly fall, they lose power, they lose strength, they have trouble getting up, down from a chair, trouble up and down stairs, those kinds of things. Our body typically slowly declines every decade of life. So if we can incorporate a program, a periodized program, we're still prioritizing running. Running is the goal. strength training never gets in the way of running. We always find those sensitive times throughout the year where we can really reestablish that foundation, build a stronger and more robust foundation. So then when we get to our next training cycle, we can do it better. These are the people typically that you see consistently run a little bit better, run a little bit faster. You know, other people get slower and slower and slower over time through a poorly crafted strength training and running program. Other people continue to do better over time. Next up, we have specificity and variability. I've kind of grouped these together. Let's see here. Group these together, two different principles, but just to be quick with them. So if we look here, two of the greatest, right? Eliud Kipchoge on the left side of your screen, one of the best runners ever. Roger Federer, who just retired recently, about a month ago. One of the best, in my opinion, best tennis players ever, definitely top 4. But we look at just the demands of the sport. Running, very simple, very straightforward movement pattern. So for you, like, we want to be like him, right? We want to train in a specific way so we can get better at the demands of the sport. As opposed to tennis, when we look at tennis, there's so much variability within the sport. Change of direction, run back, run forward, side to side, diagonals, jump, volley, serve, right? There's a lot of variability within the sport of tennis compared to running. Running is just very simple and just the same thing for mile in, mile on end. So why this matters, and we think from a specificity standpoint, if we do something very specific to our end goal, it will help in running specifically. It will help us develop the muscles, tendons, joints, and movement patterns in a manner that are applicable to the sport. So we want training in our program that's specific to where we want to get to, right? We're creating better running because we're training for running, right? So this is usually also based on evaluation. If we think about specificity from a sport standpoint, yes, we want to be a better runner, but also from a individual standpoint, we need to address our bodies in a way which addresses our own imbalances, our own differences in range of motion, our own weaknesses. If you always do a general strength training program, you always go to a group exercise class or yoga, or just follow a Peloton video, right? All those things are great, right? You're incorporating some type of strength training, but it's not specific in any way. So it's going to make you stronger. But if you have underlying imbalances, weaknesses, those things you're not really identifying, kind of teasing those out, you're probably always going to have those to a degree. So specificity matters to get better at your sport and just to be a better functioning individual. Variability matters because it helps us break the monotony of running. If you're doing the same thing every single day, so think about this, you're at work, you sit in your chair every single day from 9 to 5. Eventually, over time, people have low back pain, people have hip pain, people have neck pain, shoulder pain, because you're not adding anything else, any different stresses into your day. You're just kind of conforming to that position. So same thing with running. There's no variability in running. So that's where we need to add different type of stresses, different forces on the body. Some of my clients get out, they play pickleball. Some just shoot around and play basketball. Others do, again, downhill skiing, right? Some things are better than others that are different than running, but they're saying that through the research, participation in other sports was also found to be protective against running related injuries. And that's why I try to incorporate the strength training piece. And you'll see as programs go along, if someone's early in their program and usually very specific from a running standpoint, I want to address those movements and those patterns that allow them to be a better runner. As they build up their mileage, I'm thinking, we don't want this person getting hurt. So we start adding in triplanar lunges, we add lateral squats, we add different planes of motion, because I know they're doing a lot of straightforward movement. So I'm going to move them in different planes of motion, hopefully to preserve their body, preserve their range of motion, preserve their ability to withstand different forces. They don't only get better at this, they're still a nice, well-rounded athlete underneath. So we want to be specific, but we also want to have variability to a degree. Third principle, your foundation dictates the outcome. I think this is what we forget at times. A lot of times we just, from a training standpoint, whether that's running or triathlon, just continue to train, assuming we're going to get better. You will get better if you're specific and you're training well, following a good strategic program. However, if we're not developing strength, power, stability, and we're naturally slowly declining as we age, as we perform these endurance type sports, we need to do a better job of really addressing the foundation underneath. So my prime goal with any strength training program is this: This is the goal. That's it. Is people come in and say, hey, Garrett, I want to achieve X, Y, or Z. I'm saying, okay, X, Y, and Z is this big cup. They're currently this little cup. How do I turn them from that small cup that can only handle so much stress into that big cup? Sometimes it's always, most often, strength training, right? We add that because we can build a stronger, more robust foundation. Sometimes it's better recovery. Is it sleep? Is it stress management and meditation? Is it more prayer and attending church? Are there certain things which will keep them from being held back? Is it nutrition? Is that part of it, right? Is it a better running plan? What do we need to do to get them to move from here to here? Because I know I can stress this body a whole lot more. This cup will handle a lot more fluid, a lot more water before it overflows. So I can train this body to a higher degree, which should help provide a better result, right? That PR, faster running time, less injuries. Ultimately, our goal with that is to prevent this, right? So if we have a better, stronger, more resilient foundation, we've made the cup bigger, right? We've enhanced our foundation. There's less likelihood for that cup to overflow. So if you look at the water right there, the water essentially is just kind of indicative of stress on the body. So as we train, we're adding more stress onto the body. We can only add so much before that cup overflows. So I either need to be mindful of how much fluid I'm adding into that cup, or at the right time of year, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to build a bigger cup, right? So that's our goal here off season, is to take you from that small cup to the big cup. So we're not losing, right? Overflowing, losing water. Biggest thing here, in order to achieve a higher peak, you must first create a wider base. So a lot of times I see runners throw, hey, my goal for this race is that. I'm thinking, I don't know where that came from, right? That was your PR for 6 years ago. Okay, so what happened in those 6 years? How have you made your body stronger? You're telling me that you're going to PR this race. There's been nothing in there to make the body stronger, more powerful, or resilient. We're just hoping, right? We're just hoping to run faster on that day, or like, what are we going to do? So we need to add the right kind of strength training in there, the right type of running, triathlon training, whatever it is, to make sure we're actually enhancing the body throughout the process. So from a program design standpoint, I'm just going to check the questions here. Couple good ones too. Daryl, we're probably not going to chat much about shoes here, especially when we talk about Nikes and all those carbon fiber and all that kind of stuff. And this one, we can definitely talk about that separately. Dorina, talking about muscle mass. I think, yeah, in strength training, we're going to lose muscle mass as we age. Muscle mass, bone density, those things naturally happen. I think that's where strength training comes in and really plays a big impact. Nicolette, get direction on what to focus on. The off season for next running triathlon season, injury prevention, also get stronger, have better endurance, consistency in my runs after long swim bikes. Yep, we'll definitely dig into that as well. So from a program design standpoint, in how many days a week we want to strength train, typically 1 day per week will help you maintain what you have. So if that's all the time you have, that's all the time you have. 1 day is better than no days, but we want to try to get up to minimum 2 to 3 days per week. By no means you need to turn into competitive weightlifters. We don't need you in the gym 5 days per week. If you have the time for that and that works with your schedule, great. If that doesn't, don't worry about it. I think 2 days is acceptable. 3 days will probably give you a little bit more, but you need to make sure you manage other areas of your life as well. Biggest thing about the off season here is we can incorporate more volume from a strength training standpoint. A lot of my runners right now, again, as they train for goal races, they're usually doing 2 sets of exercises. In the off season, that might become anywhere from 3 to 4 sets of some of these key exercises. So we're doing more to really stress and strengthen the body. And we can also increase the intensity. I always get worried as we get higher in mileage, looking at plyometrics, jumping and landing exercises, calf exercises, to really stress those areas a whole lot. So I tend to back down in some. I'm less worried about that in the off season. So I know this person has the green light. They're reducing their running mileage, right? That's kind of a prerequisite here. I'm not just saying keep running, doing what you're doing, stay high mileage, and then add all the strength training. No, there's a give and take to this. You have to reduce running volume to a degree as you increase your strength training and find the right proportions there. So we can increase the intensity, add more plyometrics, add heavy strength training exercises, things that are going to make you sore where you don't really mind them affecting your runs as much. If you have kind of a strategic long run or some type of speed work, you still want to respect that to a degree, but I'm okay if you feel like, hey, I struggled through that run today. My legs were pretty sore. I'm fine with that happening in November and December. I don't want that to happen in March or April as you're getting ready for a goal race. So we're understanding that it's okay if strength training gets in the way of our running to a degree now, because it's only going to make us better when the time is right. From a workout sequence standpoint, just to keep this very simple, usually a little bit more in depth than this, supersets, trisets, different things mixed in, but dynamic warm up first, can just prep for your workout, some type of plyometrics, jumping, landing, or power-based exercises, something to address strength for most people and runners. Again, if we were in that, the 4 to 8 repetition range, so that weight should be fairly high. If we're doing 4, 6, 8 squats, it's a pretty heavy weight that we're handling. Endurance, that's more or less lower resistance, higher repetitions, or static holds, which I'll show you in a second ago. And then mixing in different accessory movements, calves, core, arms, shoulders, posture, neck, whatever needs to be, upper body, all that kind of stuff in there is kind of spread throughout the program. So if we look at some exercises right here and just kind of give you some simple suggestions. I didn't want to go too deep into dynamic warm-up. You can definitely look back and follow. I've done pre-run routines. I've done a lot of videos on things you can do to properly warm up for your workouts. It should prepare you for that workout specifically. So if you have squats, it probably should prepare your quads and your knees. If you have deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, it probably should prepare your glutes, your hamstrings, and your hips. So just thinking it needs to prepare you for that specific workout, but we can do something simple here and thinking from a general running sense, leg swings just to move through that hip range of motion, open up hip flexors, open up hamstrings. I'm not necessarily looking for more range of motion, but I'm prepping those tissues for to add more stress on them in a second. We can go through different dynamic mobility drills. Here's the Spider-Man lunge with rotation. There's so many mobility drills we can add in here just to prepare, get the body feeling a little bit more prepped and primed. Simple activation drills. If I was going to add some band hip exercises, if I was going to do some lunging exercises or anything that involves the hips here, simple activation to really get better connection, neuromuscular connection with the glutes. From a plyometric standpoint, this we start to dive into the beginning of the strength training. A lot of people are, I think from a strength training standpoint, following kind of 2 sets of 10, 3 sets of 10. When it comes to some of these other more explosive exercises, plyometric, skipping, squat jumps, and bounds, we want low repetitions and high velocity. So we want to crank things up to the point where you can explode off the ground as quickly as you can. Power is one of the quickest things we lose as we age. This is why most endurance runners get slower. I had the conversation with, I think who it was in the past week, talking about training for all these ultras, right? Trained for a 50K, a 12-hour race, actually 2 50Ks in a 12-hour race. Talking about, man, like I just feel less explosive. Like as I add my speed work in there throughout the week, still doing some kind of speed work, but just I don't feel that kick like I used to. Our body adapts to the stress we place on it. So if we're only, for the most part, training slow, long distances, whatever that means for you in terms of distance, we're going to adapt to that. So we're going to become better at slow, long distance. Good from a training standpoint to a degree. If you're training ultra marathons and all of that, we're adapting to that. Tough because our body tends to lose power and max strength as we age. So we're fueling that and accelerating that to a degree. So that's where if we add plyometrics in there, we can really target a lot of muscle fibers to work on quickly getting off the ground. This is something that is important too for older and later in life when we're 70, 80, 90 years old, to prevent falls. Especially important for trail runners as well. If we have these quick reactions where, hey, I stubbed my toe on a root, I can quickly catch myself because I have those fast twitch fibers to really react and respond. That's what we're looking for from a plyometric standpoint. So we can do something as simple as, if you're not familiar with traditional strength training, something simple as like, let's get back to our childhood here, right? Let's get back to skipping. Let's get outside, let's skip, let's bound, let's karaoke, let's shuffle, let's do those little things which get us kind of pushing off our toes and reacting quickly. This is going to help develop what's called that stretch shortening cycle, how we're using our tendons to really be elastic. It's funny, I said this to someone the other day too. I was like, we essentially want to be like a pogo stick. And she's like, I haven't seen one of those things in 20 years, right? We used to see those things growing up. I don't see any kids playing on those as much anymore. But you think of the pogo stick, as you come down, land, that spring compresses it. It explodes us right back up. We're on the ground for a short period of time, and then we're floating into the air. That's what we're looking for with some of these plyometric drills. So low repetitions, high velocity, really getting off the ground quickly, skipping, squat jumps. For a lot of people, I would skip maybe 10 to 15 feet. I'd probably do these what are called piston squat jumps. I'm driving my knees, lifting my knees up, driving into the ground forcefully to propel my body into the air, 4 to 6 repetitions. You'll see a lot of group exercise classes doing high repetition burpees, high repetition squat jumps, and lunge jumps. From a running standpoint, that's kind of what we want to stay away from. You want to do low repetition, high velocity. This one right here are bounds. Horizontal, which is running, right? We're trying to move forward and power forward horizontally as quickly as we can. So this develops that really hip extension, ankle plantar flexion, push off type motion. So we have some differences here from simple, which often become hard if you haven't skipped in a while, getting that coordination back. A little bit more stressful as we go vertical here on the squat jumps, and then harder as we go horizontal, trying to get max distance on the jump. Let me just double check. All right. So someone had a question in there that I think was specific to where we were. Training days versus off days. So a second ago, let me go back a second. A second ago, we talked about, which I didn't say, she kind of said specifically, training days versus off days. So it depends on you and your program. I have some people that we want a minimum of typically 1 off day a week. If you can get 2 in there, that's great. I think it's better for the body. So that means always prioritizing some type of speed work and some type of long run. I want those to be as best quality as possible. I'm okay off season if some of those, again, long run specifically, I'm okay if that starts to falter a little bit because your legs are tired. I want that speed work to be pretty good, because as I'm adding in the strength training, I'm getting you then to really directly use that strength and that power that we're developing with plyometrics and strength exercises and put that into your running. So you can even train, if you have the time, if you want to do a run in a strength training session on the same day, if you want to do opposite days. But I would try to make sure, like if you have speed work on Tuesday or Wednesday, do strength training that next day, ideally, as opposed to doing it the day before and you're super tired and sore for that speed work. So really prioritizing speed work and long runs. And then, I mean, if you want to stack workouts, it's always better. And we look at how bone responds to stress. If we could spread things out, ideally, that's the best situation. Some of these tissues can only be stressed so much until they break down too much. So if you have a history of stress fractures, we probably don't want to run and then immediately do strength training, or strength training and immediately run. We probably want to do one in the morning, separate that by 6 to 8 hours, and then do the other one in the evening. So it really depends on your situation, but we can stack workouts. We can do run and strength in the same day. You can do 2 strength training days per week, 3 to 4 runs per week, and still have your couple off days. You can run more with your 2 strength. Like you can do this anyway, but respect your long run as best you can, knowing that can be a little bit soggy, if you will. Your speed work should be pretty good and crisp. Now, from a strength standpoint, as we start to look at these exercises, you can see these are all what I call bilateral exercises. These are exercises as you're standing on 2 legs. So the goal or the intention here, and I show very simple variations of these as opposed to like all heavy barbell exercise, because a lot of people don't have access to that. We want to load the body up to a great degree. We still want to keep the repetitions fairly low, 4 to 8 repetitions or so. That should be a fairly heavy weight. So once you get to the last, say if you're doing 8 repetitions, once you get to 6, 7, and 8, you're wondering, shoot, am I going to make it? Am I going to get that? Obviously, we don't want to get hurt in the process by going too crazy, getting too overzealous, making sure you can get that, or you have a way out of dropping the weight and being safe. But we want to be pretty challenged as we go through this. So exercises here, like a goblet squat, if we had a nice challenging dumbbell, slow control on the way down. This is the isometric hold at the bottom and then driving up. So just a little bit more time under tension as I sit at the bottom to build that leg strength. strengthen around the knees especially, but nice upright spine, butt back, and trying to get down. Again, depending on your range of motion, there's a lot of good research showing that you see some good improvements in running performance by doing half or partial squats. So we don't necessarily need to get down this low. From a function standpoint, we probably want to be able to squat low because that matters in everyday life. But from a strength training standpoint, it's okay if we lack that full range of motion to a degree. Romanian deadlift here as compared to the squat, which is a knee dominant movement. Romanian deadlift is more hip dominant. So now that's where we get the hip drive of that hip extension. This translates to that push off motion of running where we're getting glutes and hamstrings to work together to propel the body forward. So small bend in the knees, hinge at the hips, and then I'm driving my hips forward to stand. I'm not using my lower back. I'm driving the hips forward into the dumbbell. And that's where I'm able to kind of create that strength to come up. So again, want to make this fairly challenging as I go through it, is obviously as I demonstrate these, and I actually did these all the same day, I think, looking at my clothing way back, and I don't know, probably 2017 or something like that, but went fairly light. I usually do like 20 or 30 videos at a time. I try not to make myself sore for days after making them too challenging. Next one here, hip thrust. This is a great exercise, something I didn't program a lot years ago, something I program a whole lot more now. So you can see kind of mid back between the shoulder blades are on the bench. It's just a more challenging hip thrust. So I have some people completing the hip thrust with a dumbbell, a heavy dumbbell across their hips. Some people doing it with the barbell. Some people do it with the Smith machine. If you go to Planet Fitness or the gym and you have the Smith machine, that works pretty well. But this is like more like a supine hip extension type motion. It's very similar to the Romanian deadlift, but usually in this position, it eliminates a lot of stress on the lower back. So we can add that weight on the hips, directly drive through the hips to get up, and it will strengthen glutes, hamstrings, and core. So all of these, if we're talking about heavier strength training, come the off season, 4 to 8 repetitions, usually anywhere from 3 to 4 sets of that. So this should be quite challenging. Give yourself plenty of rest in between, rest, stretch, breathe, find a new song on the iPhone, whatever you need to do, right, to give yourself a couple minutes in between, because we want these to be good quality as we go and not be something that turns into a big cardiovascular workout. We're not trying to fly between these exercises. We're actually taking our time. We're trying to make them heavy and challenging. We're resting, we're recovering, and then we're doing that again. Now, if you get to, went too far. If you go to now more single leg type strength exercises, so those were, I guess, heavy bilateral exercise on 2 legs. These are more unilateral or multiplanar strength exercises. One of the best ones from a running standpoint is step ups. It's truly on a single leg. One leg has to drive you up. That same leg has to control you down, while you're also having to stabilize the pelvis, stabilizing the leg to make sure that knee is not collapsing in or the foot collapsing inward. So there's a lot going on here from a strength and stability standpoint, which is why it really directly relates to running, because running is so stability focused. These, I load some people up with these, but because it requires so much stability, I tend to put them 8 to 10 to 12 repetitions, which is kind of just beyond that strength range. We're kind of bleeding into the endurance range to a degree. But just because if we load up so heavy on these, again, it's good if someone has good form, they've been strength training for a while. If it's a newer runner, I probably don't want to place that stress on them since they have to control so much stability as they do the movement. So I'm a little bit more conservative here. Reverse lunges is another one, very good as you kind of really drive up into that top of that hip extension motion, stepping back, lowering down, and then pulling. So we're getting quads, we're getting glutes, we're getting hamstrings, we're getting those hip stabilizers and foot stabilizers. We're getting all those muscles to work together as you also enhance single leg balance. Lateral squat, like I mentioned, the variability component, step ups, reverse lunge, I would say those are specific to the demands of running. Lateral squat, now we really incorporate that variability. So now I'm moving laterally. I still develop a whole lot of hip and quad strength with this movement. Feet are offset in this nice wide base. It's essentially a stationary lateral lunge. So as I sink down, butt back, and I'm really going to drive and push and drive up from that outside leg to come back up. This is something I sometimes switch to. If I find someone is tight or limited in their hips, they have poor hip mobility, I probably get them doing some type of lateral squat or lateral lunge movement. Or for a higher we're getting higher mileage. I want to make sure we're just moving in a nice, well-rounded way. We're not just only doing things straightforward like you'll see with step-ups and lunges. That's when that lateral squat will come in really to offset those movement patterns. But here, somewhere 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions is generally good. Still want those last few repetitions to be challenging, but obviously if we're talking about 10, 12 repetitions, the weight's a little bit lighter compared to we were doing the squats, the Romanian deadlift, and the hip thrust, which is 4 to 8 repetitions. So when you look at the number of repetitions, lower repetitions generally means we're going to lift a little bit heavier, high repetitions a little bit lighter, and that's how we accommodate the amount of repetitions. From an endurance standpoint, we can add in different things that are building these more slow twitch fibers, sitting in positions and holding for a period of time. I do this to a degree depending on where people are, but in my opinion, people are training endurance so much from a running standpoint. I really want to focus on strength. So I actually try to get my runners lifting a little bit heavier as opposed to lighter in holding or lighter in high repetitions. First one here, the soleus wall sit, one of my favorite ones to address quads and calves, and specifically that deeper calf muscle called the soleus. Sit in a wall sit position, elevate the heels and hold 30, 60 seconds usually. Split squat iso hold, brutal exercise. No one likes this. What I like to test people with to see what their quad and lower body endurance looks like. Stationary lunge position and just hold, really try to burn up those leg muscles, hip stabilizers, and quad muscle. Getting good alignment of the knee and just kind of holding that position for a period of time. We usually want to do this for a minimum of 60 seconds per side. We should be able to do that just to withstand the demands of running. So that's why I use it as a test as well. And then bridge and plank variations, right? This is the high plank. Obviously, it's a little bit more dynamic as I'm tapping the hand or the foot out to the side, but more endurance or stability focus as I'm just trying to hold my core and my trunk in position. That's not moving in any way. My limbs are moving. So I'm building endurance through the core as I have to hold for a certain amount of repetitions. So Daryl, good question. How do I strengthen lower back? So lower back, I think if you go back to, I try to be careful of overly doing exercises that are like flexing, extending, all of this motion, especially around the spine. There are some core exercises, plank variations, all of this stuff will strengthen all that stuff together. Abdominals, obliques, quadratus lumborum, all these spine, small intersegmental spine muscles. Hip bridge variations would do that. Hip bridge with marching. Romanian deadlift I showed you a second ago. We'll do that. You can do specific lower back exercises like reverse hypers, where you're in a gym and you're kind of hinging at the hips and then driving up through the hips, but it's also stabilizing and strengthening the back. There's a lot of little things you can do for the back. Usually I like to think of the back as one whole piece of the core. I see a lot of people just isolate the spine with certain things, which I think you can kind of run into trouble with, since it should be kind of one piece of the core puzzle. Now, some extra things as we look at accessory exercises, the calf needs to be one of the most important areas that you target. So this is a tiptoe walking. Some people call it the creeper, right? If you're trying to either creep through the bushes, or I tell people, like, if growing up as a kid, I don't know if you guys snuck out as a kid. I tell my mother the stories now. We used to sneak out. I had a motorcycle back then, roll the motorcycle to the end of the driveway, start it up, and then kind of go riding in the middle of the night. She wasn't too happy when I told her that, but like this, like as you used to sneak through the house here, elevate the heels, strengthen that calf, small bend in the knees. This gets that deeper soleus muscle here. So really need to focus on calf strengthening. I think the off season lends itself well to that. You target from a running standpoint, you look at running mechanics, just what muscles are used. The quad and the calf are the two most taxed areas, right? We demand the most from those areas as we run. So we want to be careful of overloading those as we incorporate a strength training program as you're building up for a race, but off season, we want to hit those quite a bit. Marching is something that I think a lot of people are neglecting. Heavy pair of dumbbells, kind of in that farmer carry position down by your side, working on good posture, good stability, just slowly marching one step at a time. As you strike down, striking that foot directly underneath the knee as opposed to reaching in front of you, working on single leg stabilization, core stabilization, posture, all of those things together. Core, we can add anything in here, right? We generally want core stability over core strength. Why a second ago I said we don't need a whole lot of flexion, crunches, sit-ups, supermans. You can do that if you want to, but we want exercises where we're holding the core in this rigid and engaged position. side plank, front plank, dead bug, hip bridge variations. Those kinds of exercises are the most specific to running. So making sure those find a way in your program. And then with all of this, you can add in your upper body. I knew it was going to be too much to include more upper body exercises as well. Anything upper body, primarily upper back, anything that gets the shoulders back, engages between the shoulder blades, upper trap, mid trap, low trap, lats, rhomboids, all those muscles to improve posture. Arms matter to a degree. A lot of my clients like still to add, we still add some arm exercises into the program. If we're going to do this, might as well do something that can not just makes you a better runner, makes you feel more confident, stronger, built, defined, whatever you want to call it, in those key areas where we're already putting in the work. 1 or 2 more exercises doesn't really change too much. So adding those in there can also be helpful. So here are some of the clients that I've worked with over the years. Again, we've really dived into the strength training piece. So Mary Lynn, down in Iowa now, Illinois to Iowa. Although running is a natural human movement, it doesn't mean everyone can naturally do it well. I'm definitely an awkward athlete, so I believe strength training and mobility drills are imperative to correcting my biomechanic glitches. Plus, it's improved my overall fitness, which translates to better running. So really worked on single leg stability, balance, pelvic control, core strength, all of those things. Probably one of the hardest working people I know. Darlene, same thing here. A little bit different in terms of what we're focusing on. Just finished a 50 miler. Doing a 50K next year. Foot, ankle, and toe strengthening have become an essential part of my training for trail running. So you can see it's not just these bigger muscles, smaller little things based on the evaluation where we see, okay, what does this person need to become successful? Again, too many programs focus on big muscle groups, do not dial in these smaller, harder conditions supporting muscles. More holistic approach and dialed in solution is what my training responds to better. Jessica talking about calves, don't underestimate your superpower, fuel your calves for lighting up the hill. So talking about really kicking into gear and some of the speed work, some of this explosive type running, calves are really taxed the most, and make sure, again, the calves are not just strong, you're also strengthening that deeper soleus muscle, but you're adding in some of those plyometrics that work on that quickness and elasticity. So you can hopefully channel your inner pogo stick. Dawn, most noticeable improvement was in my balance. So you can see here, step ups, lunges, all those things, a lot of single leg type exercise. We really focus heavily on balance and stabilization. Thought my balance was pretty good, but I was tweaking my left ankle, not a big deal, but annoying. Realized one day about 3 months in that I had not turned my ankle in at least a month. And overall, I feel more solid as I traverse technical trails. And talking about a couple 50Ks this year and these longer endurance runs, right? You want the stability as you're out there on the trail. We want that anyways, because that's something that tends to decline as we get older. And we talk about falling and hip fractures, not like we want to make sure we stay away from that stuff. So that's why I feel like getting that into your strength training program is super important. So as we start to wrap up here, and we'll make sure to dig into some of these questions a little bit more. Covered today key principles, and use principles to guide your training program. Don't just add random exercises. Know what your principles, your rules are of your training, and then use the exercises to fill in. Talked about strength training workouts, sequence of the workout, training days versus off days, things like that. Specific exercises, a whole list of exercises. So hopefully you're doing a majority of those exercises. Again, I don't recommend doing all of those in one workout. I think I must have given you 12 exercises, maybe 15 exercises. You don't need to do that much. I try to get people out of the gym off season 30 to 45 minutes or so, depending on the person. Some people, we might push that longer depending on how much time they have and what their goals are, what their training looks like, what their work schedule, their family commitments, all of that stuff looks like. But 30 to 45 minutes is usually sufficient if you're following a proper program. So question for you guys here as we start to wrap up, and we'll get into the Q&A in a second, get into that raffle as well. Do you see 1 to 2 simple areas you can improve right now within your routine? So if you do, what are those simple things you feel like you can incorporate? We'll get to more of these questions in a second that you guys left. They're good questions. So what are those 1 to 2 things that you feel like based on the webinar today that you can do better starting tomorrow? Is there certain exercises you're neglecting, a certain way of doing things? Or is it just doing the strength training? Is it just getting it in, right? A lot of people are neglecting it. Good question, Stephanie. If you do tries, can rest days and running be swimming or biking? So a whole other beast there as we talk about triathlon. A lot of my triathletes We count swimming depending on the intensity of the swimming. If they're doing swimming or biking, obviously you're thinking non-impact. So I usually like to add some type of strength training on those days, depending on how demanding they are. And that's kind of just looking at the program to see. But I don't call them rest days necessarily. A lot of my triathletes like to call them rest days. We still try to make sure there's actually a rest day in the program somewhere, but we'll reason with a low intensity swim or a low intensity bike to a degree. Terry, set a schedule, do it. I agree. All the above, just getting it in. Sleep could be better. Yep. Adding in more non-running into my routine. That's awesome, guys. So as we wrap up here, this is kind of the position I put you guys in right now, right? We cover all these things. That's what happens every single webinar. So as you enter this maze of, okay, you know, what do I do next, right? Which direction? You're welcome to, again, continue on and explore this maze, and you'll probably kind of move into some dead ends or some trap doors or whatever you find in the maze, right? As you continue to work for your next PR, and hopefully that comes this spring for you guys. If you feel like, hey, you know what? I know I need to do that. I can do better. I'm not sure which direction to go, or, you know what? I just want help. I want to do this in a more individualized way where the likelihood of success is greatly more, because I want to do better next year, right? I don't want to waste time next 3 months doing something that might not help me. Like that graphic art right there. So I'm throwing you the ladder right now. If you want to bypass all of this confusion, this wandering around the maze of trying to figure things out on your own and potentially getting lost, so hopefully you do well. I mean, that's what I hope for everyone. I am, like I mentioned in the beginning, be kicking off a 6-week program. It's going to start November 7th. It's called the Run Strong Challenge. So 3 big things, right, based on off-season strength training, and what we really try to push with this program is we just want to create better alignment. I want all areas of your training to be in alignment with your end goal. You'll be surprised at how many people are working tremendously hard, doing things, but they're all over the place. They want to get here, but they're kind of looking like this with their training, right? So all our goal is how do we create better alignment from a training standpoint? Get that running and triathlon training, that plan in check, sleep, nutrition, hydration, strength training, mobility, recovery, all those pieces need to work together and to really push you towards the end goal. And with this off-season program, our goal is less aches and pains. The more we can offset some of these aches, pains, injuries, and setbacks as we get into next year, the more you can train, and the better results you can see, because you're able to train more, right? Ultimately, if we have to take time off from training, we're not doing things that are continuing to push us to the end result. So if we can offset some of those injuries in the process, we can hopefully continue to train more, train harder, see better results in the process. And like I mentioned, off-season strength training primary goal, if we can create a wider base, we think of a pyramid or a triangle, create a wider base, so then you can then attain a higher peak, right? That's the main goal there. So if you're interested in signing up for the Run Strong Challenge, we'll you can enter names into the raffle to win a free spot here in a second, but just to understand what it includes. Program starts on Monday, November 7th. So we're about 2.5 weeks out from the start of the program. Gives you some time to kind of get on board, to do the evaluation, running analysis. I have Jill Merkel, the dietitian, doing nutrition consults for people if they wish to add that. But goal setting consultation, review of injury history, running plan, and current routine. A movement assessment, which to me is the most important piece of any strength training program. I don't want you just to strengthen things. I want you to strengthen the right things that help you be a stronger, more resilient person. So do we need to correct imbalances from side to side or what have you? And Dawn, I'll get to that question in a second. And then from there, over the 6 week, you'll get an individualized strength training injury prevention routine. Even though this is kind of a group challenge, every single person has their own program. I try to make sure, and I actually do not do general programs. I try to stay away from that as much as possible, just because running is so specific. Everyone has such a specific body, anatomy, physiology, injury history. I try to really target that as best I can. Within a private Facebook group, that's going to be kind of the headquarters for the challenge, weekly check-ins every Sunday, interaction with other motivated runners, competing with them on a regular basis, more from a consistency standpoint. Since everyone is so different in what their goals are, how fast they run, how long they run. Doesn't make sense to make this a performance-based challenge. Oh, the fastest runner wins, the person that loses the most weight. Like, that stuff drives me crazy because everyone's so different. We are after consistency. So if you can complete all your workouts, consume half your body weight in ounces of water, get so many hours of sleep, interact with the group, you can do those little things on a regular basis. That allows you to accumulate points to win the challenge. We have weekly raffles. We have gift cards at the very end. It's a pretty fun program that keeps you engaged throughout it. I use a coaching app to lay out everyone's program. So on a lot of you people, Michigan, Knoxville, all over the place, the program allows me to lay out your program, videos, sets, repetitions, us communicating back and forth, reviewing exercise form. There's a lot involved individually, just to make sure you're getting exactly what you need as I create that program. Like I mentioned, again, even if you're not in person or local here to the Milwaukee area, can do this program completely virtual. It's something I've been doing. It's something I've been doing since 2019, actually, the virtual program, and I have people in very different places, as you kind of hear here. 100% money back guarantee if you're not interested. If it doesn't create results, if you don't like it as you get started, I've never had that happen, but why pay for something that doesn't work for you, right? So when it comes to pricing this program, I try to take in consideration everything. And I think from a running standpoint, I had a conversation with the lady yesterday. We're talking about, hey, I go see my personal trainer. I have my running coach. I get a massage here. Like, the amount of money runners spend on things is tremendous, right? So my goal here is to put all these key things together into one program where we hopefully can save you money, but it helps create better long-term results. Okay, so it's cost effective, but also lasting. And I think this is one of the most important, one of the best investments you can make. I'm not saying it has to be me. Strength training in general is one of the best investments if you can get a specific plan, because this is going to set you up for next year. Yes, running shoes are going to help. Yes, getting stretching done or getting compression socked. Yeah, that stuff might help you. This is foundational. This stuff will last and actually allow you to be a stronger, more resilient person. So what I like to do here, just because you guys are joining the webinar, I want to add some bonuses on top of that. So if you're interested in signing up here, slow motion running analysis, I'll add on top of that. Usually it's an additional $100. We're going to add that for free. 2 additional weeks. So like I said, there's 2.5 weeks until we start the program. If you complete the evaluation and you want to get started, I have no problem starting to coach you now, right? We can get started immediately. So we could potentially have up to 8 weeks together for the price of, this program actually is the price of 3. So there's a lot of extra value in getting started if you want help and want to take advantage this time. I mean, I like to just reward people as much as possible that are ready to take action. So in terms of the program, again, total cost would usually be $399. Cost for this 6-week challenge, $224.99. This will only be available until Friday, right? Friday at midnight. And these extra things, just because I only have so much time on top of my current clients, the first 5 people will receive this. I cannot give that out to everyone, just because it takes so much extra time. The running analysis, the extra 2 weeks of training on top of making sure my current clients aren't getting mad at me from neglecting them. So if you are interested in that, I would definitely reach out very soon, because only 5 people will receive those extra benefits. So if you're interested in entering the raffle, I'm going to raffle off 1 free spot in the program. I'm not texting, I'm just pulling up my random number generator. So if you go into the Q&A button, which a lot of you guys have added things in throughout the webinar tonight, and you just type in "I'm in," if you want to enter your name into that, I'm going to do a random number generator, go down from the first person that said "I'm in" to the last, and we'll figure out which person is the winner. So I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds. Random number generator, 30 seconds to do this. Let's see. So Marlene, you're our first person on the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get 8 so far. I'm going to give you guys another 10 seconds. See if anyone else is going to enter. 9. Hope no one's checking on the kids right now, because they've probably been locked in the closet for an hour or watching TV. I don't know what's on right now. 7 Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. I might have missed that actually. My times are messed up now that I'm on Central Time. So we have 1, 2, 3. Deborah, I see you twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, we're going with 9 right now. 3 clicks. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bob Scrobot, I know from Michigan, I think Brighton area. You are the winner of the raffle. Congratulations. I know we had the opportunity to work together before a couple of years back, so excited to work with you again. Everyone else, what I'll do there is I'll send you a text just with the program information page. I'll send it once we wrap up here so you can look through the details of that. If you're interested, we'll just set up a time to talk about, make sure you're a fit for the program. I don't accept everyone. Make sure you're a fit for the program, and then we can kind of talk more and talk details if you're interested in getting started. But like I said, this discount, these added perks only available till Friday at midnight. First 5 people. So I'd recommend getting on them soon. The sooner you get going, the sooner you can get started, more results you can see if we have more time to work together. All right, guys. So questions, feel free to drop them in here. I'm going to look through. So first question, Dawn, great question. I am very unbalanced now in strength from side to side because of an injury and surgery. I tend to lean onto my good leg to make it easier on my weak leg. What are the best things to do to fix this? I think the biggest thing is first, need to accurately test side to side to see how much difference there is. So I have a lady right now, she actually fractured her knee. Jet skiing 2-3 months ago. So as she gets back into the flow of things, our big thing is, man, we need a correct side to side. Like, yes, let's look at that right quad. So for her, and it might relate to your situation, I do follow you on Facebook, but doing girth measurements could be helpful as well. If you actually measure different areas of your quad, measure your right quad versus left quad in your thigh to see, okay, how big is one from side to side? If one is smaller, most likely that's the weaker side because that muscle has reduced in size to a degree based on the surgery or atrophy and time off from there. You can also do some type of single leg exercises, right? You can't do exercise on 2 legs like a squat. That's not going to tell you much. You're probably just going to shift to that side. But if you did something like the split squat hold, which I showed the video of, is a really good one. If you just hold in that position and pending you're cleared to do all that, hold, how long can you hold a split squat on one side, how long on the other side? Hey, my right side is 1 minute and 10 seconds. My left side is 43. Okay, we know that as I incorporate my strength training program, I probably want to add an additional set to my left side because I know that's the weaker one. And I'm going to build that up over time, and every 4 to 6 weeks, complete the test again, just to see what that difference is, if there's a difference. And as you start to close in the gap, that's when you say, hey, I did the split squat hold again. I'm 1 minute 10 each side. I'm symmetrical, kind of just move on and do things the same way. But I think I 100% agree, like correcting that and finding symmetry is probably super important. Let's see, other question here. Arena, so April, Boston. Yeah, doing the strength training now. I think preparing that before you pick up the mileage, January, February is important. Preparing for the hills, Heartbreak Hill. Terry, plantar fasciitis. So if you look at plantar fasciitis, I think those calf exercises, I know I've given you in the past, soleus wall sit, single leg calf raise. And they also have those plantar fascia calf raises where if you're standing, your toes are elevated on a rolled up towel and you're doing calf raises, that stresses that plantar fascia more. Typically for plantar fasciitis or any kind of tendinopathy, you want to do the exercises every other day. Give a rest day in between. So if you are running and doing exercises, run. I know you said a little more sedentary now, but if you're walking or running, do that and then also do your exercise on the same day. So you have an off day the next day. Biggest thing we see with plantar fasciitis in like tendon injuries is we want that recovery day. And you can also see how you respond, make that as hard as you can. If you can do 2-3 sets of 10 calf raises, it's not hard. There's no pain. Do 15, do 20, try to make that harder over time. But those calf raise variations are really important for that. Nicolette, hope to see you in Milwaukee next year, actually. That's funny, you posted that the other day. Direction of what to focus on in the offseason. So I think just depends on you. I think doing an audit, and I always tell people, do an audit of the last year. What did you feel as you trained? What were those key areas that acted up? What is your injury history? Those are the priorities to make sure you address those. Most likely either you overtax those areas or they're a weak link in some way. So doing that, I think from a running and triathlon standpoint, I mean, you need to do everything, right? All the normal running muscles, upper body posture, neck mobility, shoulder range of motion, shoulder strength to get streamlined and then pull. You need a lot of different things there. So figuring out how you can structure your program. A lot of my triathletes now, we're going to add in, like, as they're swimming prep, they're going to do some band or some swim cord exercises, which can warm up, but kind of strength focused. When they get off the bike, try to focus on, okay, our prime goal here is to open the hips. So things can be strategically placed to kind of get you to that end result. But I know after, like you said, better endurance, consistency in my run after long run swim. So for you, possibly even doing some strength training to pre-fatigue your run to help simulate fatigue like you're going to do with triathlon, and then springing on tired legs. I mean, doing that to a degree strategically within your plan is helpful, because you'll be able to just build the body up in a way that you're going to be, again, calling upon it when you get to those races. Let's see, Andrea, do your variability and other activities need to be another high intensity sport? No. So it doesn't need to be another sport necessarily. It could actually be strength training. It could be anything. I mean, could it be gardening technically, right? If you're running all the time upright, could do things on the ground in different positions, break those movement patterns. It could truthfully be anything, playing with kids on the floor, right? Whatever, like just doing different types of movement patterns. I don't think it necessarily even has to be a sport. You don't have to join a league or anything like that. I mean, you can go and shoot around at the local courts. You can kick a soccer ball in the backyard. Like, you can do anything different. And I think that's helpful, but strength training usually can help you achieve that. Let's see. Daryl, we kind of talked about lower back. I would think about all those core ones: planks, side planks, hip bridges, Romanian deadlifts for sure. Even holding the dumbbell goblet squats, holding here, weights pulling you forward, back and posterior chain has to activate to keep you upright as opposed to being pulled forward. So there's a lot of things that actually strengthen the back without looking like they strengthen the back. And that's how I usually kind of get those into the program. Stephanie, we answered here. Other questions? All right, so let's see here. Any other questions? Yes, Daryl, webinar replay tomorrow. I'll send it to you 11 a.m. Central Time. You get that in an email. Nicolette, hope to see you in Milwaukee. Definitely let me know when you're here. Love to meet up. Any other questions? We're a few minutes late. I appreciate you guys hanging out here for a few minutes. I hate going this long on your Wednesday night. Let's see, anything else on the sign up? Balance the side to side we talked about, which I do quite a bit. Deborah, different knee strength training exercise. I'd go to the split squats, go to step ups, single leg balance and stability exercises. Strengthen your hips for sure. Strengthen your feet will help take stress off the knees. Learn how to use strength training to improve speed. So Gigi said that, learn how to use strength training to improve speed. We want a good foundation of strength and endurance first, and then layering in those plyometrics. Plyometrics are things a lot of runners neglect. Doing those in the off season is very helpful, because if you're running high mileage and also jumping, that could be, if you're doing too much, a recipe for injury. So doing some of these plyometric type movements, simple ankle hops, adding skips, the squat jumps, the bounds, single leg jumps. It could be line hops if you're just simply jumping over the line as everything shakes side to side. Simple things to work on power that helps translate to running speed, and then some of the heavier strength training exercise. But always remember, with the strength training, we want to follow a good running plan that's going to take this strength that we're creating here in the off season and actually put it into action. I see a lot of people who are plenty strong, but they're not actually training in a way that they're going to develop that strength. We still need to run properly. So have that foundation, create that with off season strength training. Follow a good running or training plan, which has the speed work, which has the strides, which has like just a mix of paces in there. And that's how we really tie both of these worlds together. So that's it, guys. I appreciate you hanging out here on this Wednesday night. Again, great interaction. Thanks for commenting in, taking the time to do that. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'll send a text here in a few minutes. Those of you who are interested in entering the raffle, if you want to look through the registration for the program, fill out the form. It just means, hey, let's jump on a phone consultation to talk a little bit more about the program, see if you're a fit for it. Hopefully get a few of you in here so we can help fast track the results. I don't want you getting lost in the maze. I hope come January, February, you're like, okay, I'm in a better place moving forward because we were proactive. We did what we needed to throughout the off season. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your night and rest of your week. And I look forward to chatting with some of you soon. Thank you.